All right, guys, we got a lot to discuss here, man. I didn't expect that there would be this much of a. It's not like it's a huge amount, but I didn't expect there to be this much of a dissent and misunderstanding on my video on disciplining a child, which this is critical. This is important stuff. Why? Because even if you don't have children, a lot of, if you don't get this, if you don't understand how to discipline a child, if you don't understand discipline itself, you're going to have problems. You're going to have problems in life. You probably already do have problems in life, and I'm going to give you some solutions to them right now as we go over some of the stuff, because it's not a question of, I am quite confident in my abilities to parent and to discipline my child. And the reason why is because it is based on sound logic. All right. Just like everything that I try to tell you guys on this channel is based on sound logic. It's based on Stoic philosophy. It's based on mindset, the things that make sense from a psychological perspective and a logical perspective. And so what's important here to understand before we even get into the comments here, because I'm going to dig into some of these comments here, and I'm going to talk about these things. And someone said, yeah, you shouldn't address haters. And I don't think that, as I looked at this, I don't think that it's necessarily that it's haters. I think that it is some people who are misguided, genuinely. That's the sentiment that I take from this at this point. But here's the thing to understand here. All right, this is, I think, the underlying principle, which is this, is that you cannot deal with a child, especially a child under your care, in the same way that you would deal with an adult or yourself. Now, there are a lot of similarities, and the similarities in how you deal with the child as far as discipline are more akin to how you deal with yourself in far as much as discipline. A child, for all intents and purposes, is your property. You're gonna be like, wow, that's no. Before you object to this, listen again. What I mean is that a child is your complete responsibility. You are responsible for everything in their life, just like you are responsible for yourself. A child is not responsible for themselves at this stage. The idea of parenting is to teach a child to become responsible for themselves, all right? But they are not. Not in a legal sense, not in a physical sense at this point in time. Now, obviously, this doesn't mean that you can do whatever you want with a child, just like you can't do whatever you want with yourself if you want to be constructive in your life. However, it is significantly different than dealing with an adult that is responsible for making their own choices and responsible for their own consequences. You are responsible legally for the things that your child does. Okay. So it is very, very important that we make this distinction here. And I think that's where a lot of the confusion lies, right? I think that a lot of you guys might be hearing what I'm saying on this channel about Stoic philosophy and libertarianism, right? Or essentially, I mean, we don't even need to use the labels, but the freedom of the individual, their individual's rights to their own sovereignty. And then you might be taking that and misapplying it to a parent-child relationship. And it's easy to do. And believe me, when I first started as a parent, that is what I wanted to do. I wanted to say, here, child, you are your own person. Let me not interfere in your life in any way, but let me help you as I can. And there are some parents that parent that way, and ultimately they fail, okay? Because it just does not work. And I'll tell you why. We'll get into this as we get into some of the comments here. So let me jump to the comments on this video here. Let me try and make this a little bit bigger so you guys can see this here, and hopefully this will be a useful learning tool here. Okay, so let's kind of start with some of these comments here. Make sure, is this not scrolling up? That's weird. I think the screen captures having so many issues today. Let me just see here. Okay, there we go. I think we're good now. Yes. Okay. So yeah. So these are the comments on this video. Or actually, you know what? Well, it doesn't matter too much, but maybe this will work now properly. Okay. So I think we're okay. Perfect. Okay. So I'm just going to read sort of the detractor comments here to give some reference. So this comment here is a thoughtful one, although I do believe that GPT was used in some of these things. But he says, John, for future reference, here's a solution on how you could maintain responsibility while incorporating understanding into your approach. Okay, seems reasonable here. Rather than a strict consequence, you should use this as a teaching moment. A discussion about accountability, punctuality, and problem solving would better equip your daughter for the future. Offering support like suggesting alternative wake-up methods or addressing any issues with the alarm helps build resilience and resourcefulness. This approach balances the reality of consequences with valuable lessons. I'm talking to ChatGPT. Okay, but it's fine. We'll debate ChatGPT. All right. The approach balances the reality of consequences with valuable lessons, fostering a more comprehensive understanding of responsibility. It creates an environment where mistakes are opportunities for growth rather than harsh punishments, preparing your child for life's challenges with non-neurotic positive mindset. So, I mean, the first thing I'll just say to this, okay, I think it's worth saying is that, look, if you can't even formulate your own opinion on the subject and you have to use ChatGPT in order to make a coherent comment, okay, then you really don't have a leg to stand on here, right? If you're going to pit me against ChatGPT with your bias into ChatGPT in order, am I saying it right? Am I saying ChatGPT? I just want to make sure here because I know I said it okay. Because I was saying ChatGPT in another video and people were losing their shit. All right, so anyway. If you can't actually form your own thoughts on this, then it really does become a straw man argument. But let's dig into it anyway. All right. So first of all, this is correct. All right, in dealing with a person, this is not bad advice here. It really isn't. But let me tell you where it goes wrong. So let's just break down a little bit. Here's a solution how you can maintain responsibility while incorporating understanding. Rather than strict consequence, you could use this as a teaching moment. So first of all, you don't have a child because this seems great. All right. And in theory, sitting down with a child, going over the possible ways to wake up and to help them understand why they need to be on time and why those things are important in life. That should be the conversation, and you shake hands, have a hug. All right. Now, I'm glad this was a good teaching moment for you to see the what happens when you don't properly pay attention to your alarm or you dismiss your alarm. So, unfortunately, that doesn't work in the real world. That's idealistic because that's not how children operate. Children will try and get away with what they can, unfortunately. And people in general don't operate this way. This is idealistic. Instead, you can talk to yourself like this. That's fine. And perhaps there are some people you can talk to like this that are open-minded. But remember, a child does not want to get up on time. A child doesn't want to go to school. So they don't want this. So having this kind of conversation, even if they agree with you, even if they understand it, is not going to result in the behavior changing. In fact, literally, you can test this on yourself. Have a conversation with yourself about some kind of bad thing that you're doing, some kind of fault that you have of a lack of, let's say, diligence or discipline, and then see if, even though you agree with it and you've outlined all the things, see if you actually follow through without a consequence. Unfortunately, without a consequence, we just don't tend to learn. So let's talk about this. A discussion on accountability, punctuality, and problem solving would better equip your daughter for the future. This has happened. Do you think that as a parent that I have not had a conversation with her about all of these things? Of course, I have had many, many conversations with her about these things. In fact, that is why the rule exists, and that's why there's a consequence that's associated for that rule, and that it has been predetermined, is because you think the very first time that she was late and didn't take accountability for herself that she immediately had a consequence? No. Obviously, a conversation occurred, okay? But a conversation is not enough. It just is not enough, all right? So, yes, this conversation did occur, and it did occur even this time, all right? It wasn't a lecture. It wasn't you're a bad person. It was just hey, look, how can I help you? Do you need me to buy you an alarm? You have the ability to ask me if that's what you need. Like, you're responsible for this ultimately. Getting up on time. This is, and the parameters were set ahead of time, right? So the parameters were set. That's like, okay, you need to be ready for school by 7:40. What does ready mean? Let me define it for you. It means that you have you're dressed for school. It means that you have your backpack, you have your shoes on, and that you are in the garage where my wife Nicole will take you to school. That's it, at 7:40. It doesn't mean 7:41. It doesn't mean 7:42. It means at 7:40. If you want to be in the car early, which is what I would suggest being ready at 7:35 and and being in the car, then that's fine. So it means having all of those things done and being ready. So that was defined ahead of time. All right. And then the consequence for that was defined ahead of time. It's like, if you miss this, right, and this is your responsibility. So however you want to do this, first of all, is up to you. If you need to, I would suggest setting an alarm. If you need some resources, I will provide the resources for you, but you are responsible for this, making this happen. Can you agree to this thing? And then it's your responsibility, right? I'm not going to take your responsibility. I'm not going to remind you. I'm not going to wake you up. I'm not going to tell you. This is your responsibility because you are the one who has to be ready for school. All right. And my responsibility is to make sure that you have transportation to school and the other things that I provide you as a parent. So this is important to understand, right? The conversation did occur. You can ask me for an alarm. You can ask me for this. I made suggestions. I said, I would suggest that you use your Alexa in order to set the alarm for the appropriate time. If you want a suggestion of time, I suggest that. I would suggest not setting multiple alarms, right? I gave plenty of suggestions along those things. And when the violation occurred, I broke down and said, this is what I would do to fix that. And if you have any questions, if you want some more advice from me, ask me and I'll give you more advice on it, right? Offering support like suggesting alternative wake-up methods, addressing issues with the alarm, helps build resilience and resourcefulness. Well, this is actually not true. It doesn't really help build resilience and resourcefulness. I did have this conversation about alternative wake-up methods and issues with the alarm, but it doesn't do that. I'm sorry, ChatGPT, but you're wrong there. You're a pattern recognition AI. Like, you just literally spit out some junk here that just fit the pattern. It sounds good, but does that really? Like, let's think about this. Let's not just take what is given to us and just assume that that's true. Does suggesting alternative wake-up methods and addressing issues with the alarm actually build resilience and resourcefulness? No. What builds resilience and resourcefulness is what I did, which is having consequences for your actions. Because, man, when you got to figure the shit out because you're responsible for the outcome and you're responsible for the consequences, that's going to build resilience and resourcefulness. Believe me, 100%. This approach balances the reality of consequences with valuable lessons, fostering a more comprehensive understanding of responsibility. Again, a bunch of mumbo jumbo. Does this really make any sense? No, it doesn't really make sense. I get it, but no. It creates an environment where mistakes are opportunities for growth rather than harsh punishments, preparing your child for life's challenges without a non-neurotic positive mindset. So, first of all, okay, let's kind of break this down here. Mistakes are opportunities for growth. That is true. That is true in my world as well. There's no harsh punishment. What kind of harsh punishment? First of all, I talk about the difference between discipline and punishment. You should watch that video if you haven't watched that. But we're not even talking about a harsh discipline here. We're talking about natural consequences. What happens when you're late for school? Okay, well, you're late. You have wasted the teacher's time. You've wasted the student's time. You've not respected their time. Someone has to drive you there late, and then someone has to explain why you're late. Is that going to be me? Am I going to explain why you're late? Or are you going to take responsibility and explain why you're late? That's not a harsh punishment. It's not harsh consequences to have to go into school. I'll make sure that you do it, that you do take responsibility. That's why I'm there. To have to tell the teacher, I need to tell the class why I'm late, that it's my fault. That's totally fine. It's not a harsh punishment at all. Okay. Will some embarrassment come from that? Yes. Should embarrassment come from that? Yes. Because that is how life works. It's taking responsibility. Please. I mean, sometimes this stuff is so ridiculous. But yeah, obviously, if you could just do this and have a conversation and that would work, there would be no need for parenting. You could just literally tell your children, hey, why don't you have them read a book? Look, I did have her read a book. I had her read the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Green and clean. It doesn't matter. It made some impact. It made some difference. But you guys, you have to understand how this actually works. People learn by their consequences. Mostly they learn by those. Now, again, like I said, watch the video on discipline versus punishment so you can understand that. But let's jump into another comment here. So, all right. It's not even tough love. Honestly, it's not even tough love. It is. There's nothing tough about it. It's just following through, right? All right. And then here, okay. Okay. All right. And here's again, I guess this is Chat GPT more so, but is this not a misapplication of responsibility? If your daughter displayed a consistent pattern of not waking up on time, it's a different story. Yes, that is the case. Now, when I first implemented this this discipline and put the rules set forth, she did. I've had to take her to school. This is the third time in a year and a half. So she's done pretty good about it, but she has not been early. She's cut it right close up to the edge of the line. And when you do that in real life, eventually what's going to happen is you're going to find that one day you're going to miss it and then something's going to happen. And that's what happened in this case. And so it is a repeated thing. You can't have a conversation. Again, if this was, if she was normally on time all the time and then one time this happened, then this rule wouldn't have been put in place. The consequence would have been put in place in the first place. But I would even challenge that to say that this is just a natural consequence. If you're even just late one time, you're still going to have to go and explain why you're late and get a tardy slip. Like, there are still consequences for that, and you still have to own up to it and have and take responsibility. So let's talk about this. So that doesn't appear to be the case here. It is the case here, actually. If she is usually responsible getting up on time for school, it's your responsibility to give her the benefit of the doubt and have enough heart to offer a helping hand and wake her up. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? You think that you should wake your children up for school? Are you kidding me? As an adult, who's waking you up for your work? Nobody's going to do that in real life. Sure, you might think that that's a nice thing to do, but it's not a nice thing to do. That's overbearing and controlling. That's where you're taking someone else's responsibility upon yourself. It is their responsibility to wake themselves up. You provide the resources. Hey, you need an alarm, you need whatever. I'm here to do that. But it is not a kind thing, right? What ends up happening is that a lot of parents, what they'll do is they'll just nag the child, right? You need to get up. You're going to be late for school. You're going to be late for school. You're going to be late for school. I said get up. Breakfast is ready, blah, blah, blah. You think that's teaching them responsibility? They have to keep on doing that every single day. I literally, as a parent, what do I have to do? Nothing. I have set especially after this consequence, you think she's going to be up and ready on time every single day? And do you think I'm going to have to even remind her one time or wake her up? Absolutely not. I'm creating a responsible human being, all right? That's self-responsible, okay? The fact that our alarm failed to go off is a completely valid reason, and your rigid approach decontextualizes the correct application of responsibility, which by itself is an expression of irresponsibility. Okay, ChatGPT. Frankly, it's a knuckleheaded approach devoid of warmth. Okay, now I guess it's an edited response from ChatGPT. I don't know. Maybe that isn't ChatGPT. Maybe you just sound like ChatGPT. Maybe just, whatever, full of a lot of extraneous words and whatnot. But here, let's just talk about that. So first of all, did the alarm fail to go off? No, it didn't fail to go off. That's what she said. But, I'm smarter than that because I can check the app, the Alexa app, and I can see that the alarm did go off, and I can see that the words from her room were turn off the alarm, was basically she stopped the alarm and she didn't get up. Okay, so guilty. Even if that wasn't the case, even if technology fails, that's a good lesson to learn. Is that, hey, in real life, let's say that this happens in real life, okay? Let's say that you have a new job, all right? And you've set your alarm, all right, your electronic alarm. It doesn't have a battery backup. That's fine. That's a risk you're willing to take. You maybe didn't even think about it, all right? And you set your alarm, and the power goes out in the middle of the night, and your alarm doesn't go off in the morning. What do you do when you get into work? Do you literally go up to your boss and say, hey, I'm late, but it's not my fault. The power went out in my house and my alarm didn't go off? Sure. You might think that that's a valid excuse, but it is not. It's not a valid. What if you're a surgeon? Okay, let's make your job a little bit more important. You're a surgeon, okay, and you're performing a heart transplant, and the heart transplant is at 7 a.m. in the morning. Do you think that if the power goes out and your alarm doesn't go off, that if someone dies now because they didn't get the heart transplant, that it's not your fault? It's your fault, okay? You need to have a backup. You need to have a way of, or take the responsibility, right? You don't necessarily have to have a backup. I mean, if you're not a surgeon, if it's not that big of a deal, but you have to take the consequences for that, right? If you choose not to have a backup. She had the option of having a backup. I said, do you want a physical alarm? she said no. In this case, again, it did not fail. It did work. But I'm telling you guys this not to justify my actions, because it doesn't need justification, but so that you understand this, because I'm thoroughly concerned for some of you guys that don't understand this, that don't have enough self-responsibility or self-discipline to understand this. You have to take responsibility for things in your life. It doesn't matter if alarms don't go off. It doesn't matter if there's traffic. Valid excuses are still excuses. It doesn't help you to have it's better to have a valid excuse than a crappy excuse, but it doesn't change the fact. If you're a heart surgeon and you have surgery at 7 a.m. in the morning, and for whatever reason, you're not there on time and your patient dies, that's your fault. You didn't get there. Now, there are some extraneous circumstances which would make it impossible for you to get there. But aside from that, if there was a way that you could have prevented it reasonably and you did not, then it is completely your fault. Regardless, it's your responsibility, especially if it's your life, right? So you got to understand these things, guys. It really is important. It's concerning to me when again, it's not everyone, but when I read this stuff, okay? And he says, which is itself is an expression of irresponsibility. It's a knuckleheaded approach to avoid war. Libertarianism as a whole is a misapplication of common sense, so it makes sense it would influence. Okay, so now we see where this is coming from. This is coming from someone who just doesn't like libertarianism. Is it the same guy? I think it's the same guy with the Chat GPT responses. But no, actually, this is how life is. You're on your own. You're responsible for yourself. So it's not a misapplication of common sense. No one's gonna help you out as an adult. You can't depend on that. Sure, maybe some people will, but that's called aiding and enabling. So anyway, I did reply to this. He said, concerning the circumstance, situation demands a more understanding and supportive response. That's my take. Look, and I want to be clear on this. Was I understanding and supportive? Man, when she woke up, I was upset for her. I was like, man, it sucks that you're gonna have to suffer this consequence. I don't want you to suffer the consequence. I made it clear to her. I'm like, I'm not mad at you. She apologized profusely. She's like, oh, I'm sorry, Dad. I'm sorry. I'm like, look, hey, don't apologize to me. Like, this is your, it does take up my time that I have to take you, but this is your consequence. Like, you're the one. I feel bad for you. This is, I'm not mad at you. Like, you made your choices and you can make your choices. Now, I can, it's your responsibility, but if you would like some of my advice, this is what I would advise. I would advise making sure that you're 5 minutes early every single time. And then if you need a backup or you want a physical alarm, that you do that. I would advise only having one alarm instead of having, I think she had 4 or 5 alarms. And the reason why is because you get confused and then you think you can snooze alarms and you get in the habit of snoozing alarms and you might even sleep through alarms, right? At one point, I actually changed the sound on her alarm for her because she was saying that it wasn't waking her up or she was ignoring it, so that she would know. And I would say you could do that, but I would recommend just having one alarm. So I feel like, yeah, was it a empathetic response? What did he say here? Was it a understanding and supportive response? Absolutely. All right. So he says here, rules are important for establishing a framework. There are situations that demand flexibility and understanding. This is not true. Not really. Not in the real world. Okay. Rules have to be upheld when they are enforced. Otherwise, rules have no value. That's the state of society today. All right. Right now, in society today, again, I'm not one for necessarily obeying all of the law because the law is not moral law. At the same time, we are seeing selective upholding of rules, right? Especially where I'm at in California. It is chaos when you do that, because now what you're doing, see, here's the thing, whether you like the rules or you like law or not, or you like authority, it doesn't matter. What the rules do is they create impartiality. All right? If you have rules, you take out judgment, you have impartiality, which is important. That's why they have to be unilaterally enforced and consistently enforced. Because if you don't consistently enforce rules, what happens is you have bias. And so let's say that I am a cop, okay, in the real world. And let's say that there's a law. And if I choose whether or not to enforce that law, well, maybe I'm going to discriminate against a person based on their skin color or their age or their religion. And I can do that now by selectively enforcing the law. So I should be held responsible for not enforcing the law. it is not my discretion to choose whether or not to enforce the law. That's why the judicial system exists and there are judges. The judges then can make the fair determination in a court, but it is not for someone to just generally do that. And that's why it is true that there really should not be much flexibility and understanding in terms of that, right? Especially for consequences that are not dire. There are, unforeseen circumstances that's true. But you do have to apply the consequences, especially when they're natural consequences, right? And again, what other thing would have happened? I could take responsibility for her being late for school, but it wasn't my responsibility. I made her take her own responsibility. That's it. Okay. It says, while I appreciate additional context, it's important to recognize that parenting involves balancing rules with understanding. In the world, yes, consequences exist, but effective parenting also involves discerning situations. What does that mean? Your daughter's alarm being canceled was an unforeseen technical glitch. No, it wasn't. She said, cancel the alarm, okay? Supporting her during such an instance fosters trust and responsibility, teaching valuable life lessons without unnecessary rigidity. I disagree. Even if the situation were different, even if the situation were such that the alarm, there was a technical glitch, I would have expressed the empathy. I would have said, man, I really feel bad that, that sucks that happened to you. That sucks that there was a power outage. However, you're still late. And you're still going to have to explain why you're late. Now, yeah, in that circumstance, would I have been, perhaps a little bit less strict about, that the consequence of the rule and made it as light as possible? Yeah, but I would have still said, hey, you still have to go in there and tell them that you're late and explain what happened. That's, because it's still your responsibility. And there is still, again, it seems like a rare case, but you didn't account for the possibility that the power could go out or there could be a technical glitch. So, that's a risk. I'm willing to take that risk as a person. I think it's a reasonable risk to take, but sometimes the dice are not going to fall in your favor, and that's how life is. So I think there's a pretty good argument for that as well. So in examining the broader implications, it's worth noting that the strict adherence to libertarian principles might sometimes lead to lacks of flexibility in understanding unique circumstances. That's not how libertarianism works. Libertarianism, when applied without nuance, can inadvertently neglect the empathetic and supportive aspects of essential and fostering healthy relationships. This has nothing to do with libertarianism. So we're just going to skip this because it's just dumb. All right. This comment, interesting one. Humiliating her in front of the class and taking her electronics are not consensual. You would never treat an employee or a friend that badly. You can't have a moral rule with an exception that allows you to treat children worse than adults. Perhaps props for not yelling though. But again, okay, this is, first of all, I didn't humiliate her in front of her class, and that was not what the consequence was. The consequence was taking the responsibility of declaring to your class that you were late. It wasn't like I made her wear a sign or shaved her head or did something that was just for the purpose of humiliation. It was the purpose of taking responsibility. Okay. And then the thing about you would never treat an employee or friend that badly. There's nothing badly being treated here. You would treat an employee like that. If an employee was late, they would need to say why they're late. They would need to take responsibility for that, and you would expect them to do that. And yeah, it is true. You can have. You do need to treat children different than adults, not worse. It's not worse. It's just that you are responsible for the child. Like I said, you can really think of a child as your property that you need to protect and that you are responsible for, because that, according to the law, that's how it operates. Again, I'm not saying this in a negative way or that you can do anything you want with your child. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I am saying that is more of the way that it is. A child is an extension of yourself in a legal sense and in a responsibility sense until they are old enough to take care of themselves. So you are responsible for them and their actions, and you cannot just treat them the way that you would an adult. You should give them, as they prove their responsibility, more autonomy and more freedom, but you cannot give a child 100% freedom like you would an adult. So it is not the proper way to handle things. So then he goes on to say here, and I'll address this. This is the final thing. He says, "Hi, John, I appreciate your response. I'm not a hater or a troll. I've been following your work for years and comment here every so often. If all the kids have to explain to the class why they're late, that's the school's problem, I guess. I assumed it was something you just made her do as punishment. No, it is something that I had her do. All the kids don't have to explain that because all the kids don't have parents who actually care about their children and care about raising functioning adults. this should be how all parents parent their children. If the child is late, the child should explain why she's late. That's how it should go. The school does not enforce that. In fact, the teacher was shocked that I did that, but I guarantee you that I got the Parent of the Year award when I brought my child to school and made her explain and take ownership of being late. There's nothing wrong or bad about that. Again, you have an issue with being humiliated because you were probably punished instead of disciplined. Now, if this was a punishment, I'm humiliating you for the purpose, not for your own correction and not so you could benefit from that, but just to hurt you or harm you or make you feel bad, then yeah, then you would be right. But that is not the purpose of this. This is discipline. It's not punishment. Right. It would make sense to give a child with a not fully mature brain more leniency compared to an adult, just as you would an older person with cognitive decline or just any cognitive impairment. It sounds like this school is doing the opposite, public humiliation for not being on time. Again, the school isn't doing that, and you're not correct in that either. Again, if you're dealing with a 4-year-old, yeah, you can't expect a 4-year-old to be on time, but you have to look at a child's developmental progress and how much responsibility they can take for that, right? So you can't expect a 5 or 6-year-old to get up, to set their alarm and do those things. But once a child has the ability to set an alarm, to experience the consequence of their actions and to rationalize these things, it is important that they take that responsibility. That is totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. If electronics is your property, like a family computer or tablet, then access is a privilege because it's your property. But if it's her electronics, she should have property rights and not have them taken away as punishment. Again, this would be a application of libertarianism, except that's not what I'm doing in this case. This is not true. All right, this is categorically untrue. So as far as property, right? When I take my child's property away from them, which again, is it truly their property? We can say, let's say that it is, okay? But just because they have it doesn't mean that they have the right to use it. All right, there's a difference. There's a privilege there, and I'll give you an analogy that will make it pretty clear to you. Okay, so. And I have dealt with this one, right? I pay my daughter in order to, if she does the dishes every week, right, then she gets paid a fixed amount for the days that she does the dishes. If she keeps her room clean, she gets paid. If she doesn't get an allowance and she doesn't have chores, okay? Instead, she has work that she can do in order to earn money. That's worth it to me. That is a fair price. That I'm like, okay, it's worth me paying that amount of money. It's not exploitive. She can make the choice if it's worth it to her or not. So that's how that works. So she earns money. All right. Now let's say that she's got $50, and we go to the store, and she wants to buy $50 worth of candy. Technically, I will allow her to do that. However, I'm not going to allow her to eat $50 worth of candy. Does that make sense? Right? It's her property. She can do what she wants with it, right? Is that how you're going to parent? Is you're going to allow your child to spend their money on whatever they want, and then when it's their property, they can do whatever they want with it? So again, she has a phone. Should she be able to use that phone all night long if she wants to? Should she be able to do anything that she wants with that phone? Text whoever she wants? Look up whatever websites that she wants? If she pays for the internet access? No. Obviously not, right? Do you see the problem with your thinking? It doesn't make any kind of sense at all. For an adult, yeah. For an adult, sure, it makes sense. You can do whatever you want. For a child, it does not make any sense. Because if you're going to say that you can't take away a child's property and that it's their property rights and they can do whatever they want with it, then you have to let them spend $50 on candy and eat all that candy. Or you have to let them have their phone and get on whatever internet website that they want as long as they've paid for the phone and they've paid for the internet, which obviously doesn't make any sense at all. So this is, again, if there's any example that I've told you today why there's a difference between an adult and a child and how you must deal with them, that's the perfect example, right? Because there's a lot of people that do argue that children are little human beings and you should treat them thus, that your responsibility as a parent is only to provide the resources for them and the teaching, but not to interfere with their life. Let them do whatever they want. Let them choose whatever they want to do, when they want to go to bed, when they want to get up, and what they want to do. However, that's completely wrong. It will lead to destruction if you do that. When they become an adult, then they can make those choices. It's totally fine. He says here, I'm spending the effort here because I know you listen to reason and want to challenge your ideas a bit hopefully I'm not strawmanning your arguments. Happy to do corrective stuff. So I do appreciate that attitude, and I do appreciate actually you guys pushing back on me, because I don't want you to just blindly agree with me when I create content and I make videos. I do want you to push back when you disagree and call me out on stuff, because it creates an opportunity for me to respond to that. And sometimes, sometimes there are instances where I am wrong and I have to think about this. But in this instance, for example, it's because there needs to be more clarification, and there's some things that are not understood. And again, we could talk about how to apply this to yourself, but I think you could probably see how this works, right? You could substitute your inner self with a child, and that's how you need to be a good parent to yourself. So being a good parent to yourself doesn't mean let yourself do whatever you want to do. Okay? It means to apply discipline instead of punishment, and to limit your resources at times, and to make yourself pay for the actions that you do, that you have the consequence for the actions. It means unilaterally, consistently applying the laws that you've created for yourself, the rules you've created for yourself, not to judgment. Again, you can take the same thing, right? It doesn't matter if there's a good excuse. If you start to selectively apply the rules that you've created to yourself, to yourself, you're going to have bad consequences, because you're going to make bad decisions because you're biased. And so the same thing in parenting. So anyway, I know that was a lot, but there's a lot to say on that. We'll see you tomorrow.